What's good, YouTube? What is good? Another day, another video here. I'm gonna start experimenting with more frequent videos, a higher volume of videos, because we're up to 59 subscribers, which is cool. And we're starting to reach that point of continuity on this channel. So, continuity, that's a term I made up. So what do I mean by continuity? What I mean by that is every hour or every couple hours, not quite every hour yet, but at least every couple hours I'm getting a view on one of the videos on the channel. So right now it's up to about 110 to 120 views every 48 hours on the channel. And then there's 24 hours in a day, so you can do the math there. When you have a YouTube channel, in the creator studio, there's all these sections of like data you can pick out about the audience, about how long people watch your video, how many hours your videos have been watched, etc. And then in the corner on one of the screens, there's a views every 48 hours section, and that's where I'm kind of getting those numbers of 110 to 120 views over the 48 hours. So I'm getting that consistently. So I'm gonna start experimenting with just a greater volume of content, so like we can see how we can get those numbers up. I've experimented with a variety of different things, but now we're gonna go into volume here. So, and then there's a lot of things to say, so that I think volume is a good era to be going into right now. So in this one, I'm gonna discuss, no script again here. In this one, I'm gonna talk about how we're probably, not even probably, I'm pretty sure we're definitely at war right now. And there's a lot of indicating factors that we'll probably go over in this video. But the main one I want to discuss is the printing of money. So every time, or I can't say every time, right? Because I've only been born for 24 years, and I've only gone through the history of so many conflicts. But it seems, to me at least, for the last, I'll just go up until the Civil War to be safe here. Every time that there's a major conflict, or in other words, a war basically, governments print money in order to fund that. Print money is a more updated term because there hasn't always been printing presses. But I mean, ever since there's been printing presses, money's probably has been printed. But even before that, there were ways of quote unquote printing money, essentially devaluing the currency so you could have more of it before people realized that it was kind of worthless, and then using that to fund whatever you wanted to fund. So governments would use that to fund conflicts. Even back before there were printing presses, they did things like when they had silver as currencies, they would intermix lesser metals during the making of the silver coins or whatever. Like during the silver coins, usually it'd be coins that they would be using as currency. They would intermix lesser metals during the making of those coins, and they would pass that out. And over time, the coin became less and less composed of silver and more composed of all these other metals. But by the time that it got so bad that people noticed it, they had already funded a bunch of different things, whether it be conflict or home loans or whatever. So the same thing has been done after printing presses. The same thing has been done with the value of paper currency. Because now you didn't even have to do all that like metallurgy stuff in order to devalue your currency. Now it was just easier. You could just print more of it, and it would have the same effect essentially of devaluing the currency just because of the laws of supply and demand. So, and supply and demand happened with the old way of devaluing currency because when you had lesser metals, it was easier to make more of it. So it is a similar concept. Humans have been doing, a lot of the same things for a long time. But so I'm just going to go back to the Civil War. So during the Civil War, President Lincoln issued greenbacks in order to pay for the war. And I think these were backed by gold. You guys can check my history because I haven't done the work of a historian when analyzing all of these conflicts. So I've only done kind of like just preliminary research and what I know from my own surface level research basically and the documentaries I watched. Greenbacks were printed in order to fund the war. And I think these were backed by gold. But so up until that, like even during that time, you had the same concept of printing money and then the government going into debt in order to fund the war efforts. So whether that be buying munitions basically, which I think is a big cost. That's a big thing that people spend money on, like during wars, buying munitions. Or whether it be hiring mercenaries, I think that's also something that's kind of underrated, but that's also done a lot. And things like that. So I don't know, I'm not a Civil War buff. I don't know too much about that. But moving forward, there has been several wars. So you had the Spanish-American War, which was America's first, I guess, run at imperialism. I don't know too much about this war because it was kind of one of the shorter conflicts, I think, in U.S. history. But I'm almost positive money was printed for that. And then you had the whole populist movement back then surrounding that war, because I believe it was in the 1890s, if I'm not mistaken. And you had populism going on after that. So just think about what populism means. How people start getting mad at big businesses and big money being involved and taking over the little guy, quote unquote. I could just imagine during that time, all of these businesses that were helping with the war effort were probably getting money from the government because they were directly funding the necessary things that the government needed to go to war. So back then, it was probably munitions again. And I don't even know all of the different things. Probably railroads, I'm guessing, in order to move things around. Explosives, things like that. I don't exactly know what was involved in the war effort back then, but you guys could fill in the history gaps for me if you want to. But yeah, so you had that Spanish-American War. You have World War I and II. I think those were the next major conflicts in U.S. history after the Spanish-American War. Because after the Spanish-American War, America kind of became an imperialist nation, essentially. It kind of started becoming an empire, because I think we took over, like, the Philippines, I think, were a territory that the U.S. took over from the Spaniards after winning that war. But, yeah, again, you guys can fill in the gaps for me. But now you have World War I and II when you get to the 20th century. World War I, at first, the U.S. doesn't want to get involved in the war. But then you have the sinking of the Lusitania, which gets the general populace, they want to go to war with Germany after that ship is sunk. And I'm pretty sure there were probably interests that wanted to go to war even before that ship was sunk, but it just took that ship being sunk in order to get the general populace behind a war effort. And then during that war, you have the government. Around that time, I think it was 1913 that the Federal Reserve Act was passed. And then you have a funding of, I was watching the Titans That Built America the other day, and you had a lot of people, namely DuPont, that made munitions, and he got rich off of that war. I'm pretty sure he wasn't the only one, he was probably just the biggest one. But basically, during that war, a lot of people, big companies got rich that funded the war effort. DuPont being among one of them. So World War II, and I don't know how much into debt the U.S. went. I'm not sure how the printing money went on that one, but World War II, you have basically a bunch, because that was a huge industrial war. So World War One was the first kind of industrial machine like war where everybody just, the whole population was kind of involved in pushing the war, and like it affected more people because kind of before that you had the army. Oftentimes it wasn't even a standing army, but you had the army. They would go to war, the war would end, and then things would kind of, or I don't want to say go back to normal, but it wasn't a whole total country kind of conflict where everybody was kind of involved. But World War One and Two kind of changed that. So everybody was basically involved, they knew about it, and it affected a lot of people. And like a bunch of people died. It was like industrial warfare. So World War II was like the peak of industrial warfare, essentially. So you had like a ton of companies, and I'm gonna watch that next Titans Who Built America. I'm gonna watch that next, the next show in this series there, and I'll probably learn more about this. But you have the Ford company involved in the war making cars. You have, I'm pretty sure DuPont was involved in that again, but in this, I think he was making cars by this time, so involved with that. You have airplanes being made by like United Airlines, or like the Boeing, William Boeing, I think was his name. You have that dude making planes and that company behind planes. Like you had a lot of big businesses essentially getting money from the government, getting contracts from the government in order to fund war efforts. And then, okay, so this video is getting pretty long, but the same thing kind of goes on over time. You have that kind of thing going on, and then there's a lot of like, and then after the wars, the countries start needing things to be rebuilt in their cities. So you have the US printing money and sending out loans to those places, like, and that goes on. And then US gets off the gold standard in the 70s. But, fast forward up to today. So today you have what I think, to be honest, is war going on. And you have, what are the big businesses now? So now it's the tech companies, right? Because the war, it's not an industrial war like we witnessed back in the like industrial revolution times, or the height after the industrial revolution, the height of industrialization of like this country in the early 20th century. It's not like that anymore. Like the war has changed. So now it's like a data-driven cyber war is what's going on now, it seems like. And what are the big companies now? They're tech and data-driven. So like Microsoft's, Google's, Amazon's, Palantir's, etc., companies like that are the ones that are now getting contracts from the government. So, I mean, you tell me what's going on. And all of these loans that are, all of this, the money that was pushed out, a lot of it, over the coronavirus time, a lot of it went to big businesses. And a lot of small businesses were mad about that. They said, oh, the big businesses got the business loans, and then we got the scraps, basically. That's what a lot of small business people said. And I'm starting to kind of realize that maybe that was, to be honest, by design, because maybe if you were a small business and you were helping with the war effort, maybe you might have gotten the money first. But all these huge corporations, I'm pretty sure they're all helping with the war effort, because the more I research about technology, because I'm doing that research, I'm learning about it, the more I realize it's basically about espionage, to be honest. Most of it is like almost spyware kind of thing. And, you know, because it's just collecting data, right? The more data you can collect, the more you can try to analyze people's moves and make your own moves, like predict their moves, and then make your own moves based on what you predict about what they're doing. So it's like a chess game almost, when you have, and you just want to keep acquiring more data so you can just get better at the chess game, essentially. And yeah, that's good for businesses, so like people can make more money, but that's good for governments and people at war, so then they can win a war, right? You know, there's so many versions of chess games you could play, and the government prints money. So if you're a business trying to play a chess game, you don't have the power of printing money. So if you're a business, you can essentially print money and have like taxpayers pay for it later through, you know, interest payments or inflation, whatever you want, whatever side of the spectrum you're on, you can say like how it's being paid for. But yeah, so that's kind of where what I think is going on now. I think there's a war, and the enemy is, it's probably multiple. I mean, it's Russia. Look at who's look at who is behind cyber attacks. So Russia's behind a bunch of cyber attacks right now. So Russia's probably one of these enemies. And China with the coronavirus, I mean, I'm pretty sure that was an act of war. China must be. And then they also have their share of cyber attacks. So China's probably one of the people we're at war with. Iran has their share of the cyber attacks. So Iran's probably someone we're at war with, and the whole nuclear deal and all that crap. Like, so I'm pretty sure we're in a stage where we're at war, but it's like trying to be held under the rug, and a bunch of distractions are coming out. So now you have people obsessed with race, obsessed with LGBTQ and all this stuff. Now I think they have a whole month, right? So black people have a whole month, women have a whole month, LGBTQ has a whole month. Who else? I think like Spanish, like Mexicans have a whole month. Like Latinos or whatever, I'm pretty sure they have a whole month. So we're just being like split up and distracted, it seems like, while war is going on. So almost no one really notices, hey, there's a war going on, and it's pretty big, and it's an informational war. It's not like an industrial war like we're kind of used to. It's like a data-driven information war. And then all the money is going to that. So we're printing so much money. We're printing trillions of dollars. Biden wants, he said like a $6 million infrastructure thing. He said apparently he cut it in half. Like now he's talking about 2 trillion or something like that. But just unknown trillions of dollars going to what? I mean, infrastructure, war efforts. While you have the actual real infrastructures, the small businesses, the people that could really create an infrastructure if we were serious about infrastructure, those people aren't getting the money. But all of these big entities and unknown players are getting the money. And like if you just follow the money, it seems like we're at war here. So, well, I mean, to be honest, I kind of know that we're at war here. But yeah, because just looking at, I mean, coronavirus and the lockdowns, I mean, come on, you have to be almost stupid to not understand that. But yeah, I'm just trying to put it together and put it in the context of history, I guess, is what I'm trying to do. Yeah, and that's basically what I have here. So hopefully that just gets your mind turning. And you know, a lot of this was, you know, on the spot. Like maybe I should have written a script for this one, you know, but I'm trying to experiment with higher volume and stuff like that. These are just kind of things I've been thinking about and noticing. And you know, I mean, it seems kind of funny. It seems almost obvious to me. I mean, this is what happens when governments, to be honest, get like this. You have just covert wars basically, and that's just annoying. So now you have the general population that's just kind of messed up, like the masses, if you will, or whatever. Like people are concerned with all of this, all of these other issues, like women. MGTOWs are like all concerned with women. Like feminists are concerned with their rights and all that garbage. Like people are fighting about race and all this stuff. But meanwhile, just a ton of money is being printed to fund war efforts. People are losing their purchasing power, and everyone's kind of getting more like at each other's throats and like almost looking to the government to solve some problems, whereas the government is just trying to fund a war effort in reality while they're pretending to care about all these domestic issues. Like when you have domestic issues, you can't ask the government to solve that. The only people that can solve domestic issues are the domestic citizens themselves. Like no overseeing government solves domestic issues. That's impossible. So when you print money and the government starts buying up stuff, you just know for certain that they're not concerned about the domestic issues. But it is a good front in order to like cover up the stuff going on under the rug, in my opinion. Like, or I mean, I'll just say in my opinion, but just this has happened throughout history where you distract the populace with different stuff and then you go fund a war effort. Yeah, like that's basically it. But screw it, I'm just gonna watch basketball today. That was just my video experimenting with volume. Just trying to build up whatever we can build up here, because I don't want to be involved in a war effort or any of that like feminism nonsense or race stuff. Yeah, so that's just what I'm doing. But alright, I'll catch you guys later. Definitely leave your comments, or if this video is too long, just do whatever you want while watching it, or maybe just leave some comments and don't watch it. It's up to you guys. I'm just experimenting with some volume here, so it is what it is. Yeah, screw it. Hopefully we can get the subscribers up, and yeah, that's all I got for today. So yeah, that's basically it. I'll catch y'all later. Hopefully we have some good games in the NBA today. Peace out.